He thought it was just another blind date. But when she looked into his eyes and whispered, "You don't remember me, do you?" Everything he believed about his past began to fall apart. What secret did he bury so deep that even time tried to erase it? Stay till the end, because the truth waiting for him is something no heart can ever truly forget. Ethan arrived early. The cafe was quiet, filled with the low hum of soft jazz and the faint aroma of roasted coffee. Golden light poured through the tall windows, painting warm reflections across the polished tables. He checked his watch again. 5 minutes past the agreed time. His palms felt slightly damp, and he rubbed them against his trousers, trying to calm the nervous rhythm in his chest. He had agreed to this blind date only because his friend insisted. "Just meet her," his friend had said. "You might actually like this one." The bell above the door chimed softly. Ethan looked up. A woman stepped in, graceful, calm, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on him. She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. Her presence was strangely familiar. She walked toward him, the click of her heels in rhythm with the soft music. "Ethan," she asked gently. He stood, nodded, offered his hand. Her touch was light, almost hesitant. They sat down, and for a moment, silence wrapped around them. He tried to remember where he had seen her before. Her face stirred something deep, a memory half-formed, hovering just out of reach. "So," she said softly, stirring her coffee, "how had you been all these years?" He blinked. "All these years," he repeated. "I think you have mistaken me for someone else." Her smile deepened, but her eyes told another story. "You do not remember me, do you?" she whispered. The question hung between them like a slow echo. Ethan's throat tightened. A chill crept down his spine despite the cafe's warmth. Her voice carried a strange mix of sadness and quiet amusement. She leaned slightly closer, her perfume faintly sweet, familiar. Something inside him stirred again, an image, a night, the sound of rain, and a voice calling his name. But the memory slipped away as quickly as it came. He forced a laugh. "I think you have the wrong person," he said, though his words felt uncertain. Her fingers brushed the edge of her cup. "I never forget faces," she said softly, "especially the ones that tried to forget mine." The air between them grew heavy. The soft hum of the cafe seemed to fade into a distant murmur. Ethan's heartbeat grew louder in his ears. He searched her eyes, trying to read them, to place the ghost of recognition that now refused to leave. Outside, a shadow passed the window, briefly darkening the golden light. He looked up, then back at her. Her expression had changed, calm, but distant, almost unreadable. He wanted to ask who she was. But before he could speak, she smiled again and said quietly, "It is all right. You will remember soon." A faint tremor ran through his hand as he lifted his cup. The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. He swallowed, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. Her eyes never left his face, and for the first time that evening, he realized he was not sure if he wanted to remember it all. Ethan set the cup down carefully, as though it might shatter from the smallest movement. The clink of porcelain against the saucer felt sharper than it should. Every sound seemed to stretch, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low laughter from another table, the soft hum of the ceiling fan. But around them, time felt slower. He forced a breath and tried to smile. "You said, 'I will remember soon.' What do you mean?" She tilted her head slightly, her hair falling over one shoulder. "Memory is a strange thing," she said. "It hides what hurts, but it never lets go completely." Ethan's throat felt dry. There was something in her tone, not anger, not longing, something in between. He wanted to ask her name again, but somehow, saying it felt dangerous. She reached into her small beige purse and placed something on the table. A silver pendant. Simple, circular, slightly scratched around the edges. He stared at it. It looked ordinary, but his chest tightened as though the air had thinned. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice quieter than before. Her eyes softened. "You gave it to me," she replied, "on the last night before you left." He froze. The cafe seemed to fade, the sound of laughter replaced by the faint rush of blood in his ears. "I think you are mistaken," he said quickly. "I never—" "You did," she interrupted gently. By the old train station in the rain. The word struck like a whisper from another life. A train station. Rain. He saw it suddenly, a flash of light against wet tracks, his reflection in a puddle, a hand reaching out. Her hand. He blinked hard. The image dissolved. He leaned back, heart racing. She watched him quietly, as if waiting for him to catch up to a truth she already knew. You left, she said softly. You said you would come back. Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. Something inside him stirred again, deeper this time, a pulse of guilt, maybe grief. He swallowed hard. I think, he began, then stopped. I do not understand. She smiled faintly. I know, she said. You forgot because you wanted to. Her calmness unsettled him more than anger ever could. He looked down at the pendant. It was engraved on the back. Two initials intertwined, E and L. He ran his finger over the faint carving. L. The letter lingered in his mind like an unfinished sentence. He looked up at her. Lena. Her eyes widened just slightly, then softened. I was wondering how long it would take, she said. The name rolled off his tongue, heavy and foreign, yet familiar enough to hurt. Ethan felt a dull ache in his chest. A space he had not known was empty. I thought you, he started. She shook her head. I did not, she said. But you did. The words cut quietly, leaving no visible wound but a deep sting. Ethan rubbed his temple, feeling a wave of unease. He tried to recall more. Her voice in the rain, her laughter by the tracks, the way she had looked at him under the flicker of station lights. But every time he reached for the memory, it slipped away like mist. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. The golden light through the window dimmed, replaced by the cool gray of an approaching storm. She glanced outside, then back at him. You said you would meet me again, she whispered. On this day, at this place. He frowned. That was years ago, he said slowly. How could you know I would come? Her gaze was steady. I did not know, she said. But I hoped. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. Something about her words carried both faith and resignation, as if she had been living in the shadow of that hope for too long. He leaned forward slightly. Why now, he asked. Why after all this time? Her eyes glistened faintly under the cafe light. Because, she said, you are about to make the same mistake again. His brow furrowed. What mistake? The one you made the night you left. The storm outside began to fall, rain tapping gently against the window pane. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and coffee. Ethan's reflection shimmered in the glass, doubled. One in the cafe, one beyond it. He felt the strange sensation of being watched by his own memory. Lena's hand rested on the table, close to his. You said you were leaving for something better, she said quietly. But some things you cannot outrun. He wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong, that he had never met her before that evening. But the more he looked at her, the more that denial broke apart. He remembered flashes, the laughter, the promise, the train horn fading into the distance. He remembered her face under a flickering street lamp, her eyes filled with the kind of sadness that only comes from someone who already knows how the story will end. Why did I leave? He asked suddenly. Her lips trembled slightly before she answered. Because you were afraid, she said. Not of me, of what you felt. Ethan leaned back, his breath unsteady. Rain streaked down the window beside them, blurring the world outside. Inside, the cafe felt smaller, as though the walls had drawn closer. He stared at the pendant again, the tiny engraved letters now sharp under the soft light. What happened to us? He asked quietly. She smiled sadly. We happened to time, she said, and time does not wait for anyone. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Finally, she stood, smoothing the fabric of her dress. Ethan rose too, uncertain whether to speak or stay silent. Lena looked at him with an expression that carried both warmth and distance. I just wanted you to remember, she said, that once you did not run away. She turned to leave. The bell above the door chimed softly. Cold air rushed in as the door opened. Ethan's chest tightened. Wait, he said. Lena, please. She paused, her back to him. For a moment, he thought she might turn around. But she only said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Do not forget twice." And then she stepped out into the rain. Ethan stood there, frozen, watching her silhouette fade beyond the glass. The pendant lay on the table, glinting faintly under the cafe light. He picked it up and held it in his palm. It was still warm, as if her touch lingered within the metal. He closed his eyes. The sound of the rain grew louder, echoing something buried deep inside him. And somewhere between the thunder and his heartbeat, he remembered the night she was talking about. The rain, the promise, the goodbye that had never truly ended. He opened his eyes again, staring at the door she had walked through. The street beyond was empty, except for the falling rain. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of everything he had tried to forget, and the quiet understanding that some people return not to stay, but to remind you what you once lost. Ethan stood by the door long after she was gone. Rain whispered against the glass, steady and cold, as if the world outside mourned something he had only just begun to remember. The pendant lay heavy in his hand. He traced the initials again, E and L. The edges were rough, the surface slightly worn, but it pulsed with something alive, something old. He slipped it into his pocket and took a breath that trembled as it left him. He had spent years convincing himself that the past was clean, neatly folded and put away. But her voice had torn through it like a tear in fabric, revealing what he had buried. The cafe door creaked as he pushed it open. The sound of rain wrapped around him immediately, soft but relentless. Streetlights shimmered against the wet pavement, their reflections dancing like ghosts on the ground. He looked both ways down the street. Lena was nowhere in sight. For a moment, he wondered if she had been real at all, but the warmth of the pendant against his chest told him she was. He stepped into the rain. The cold hit his skin, sharp and honest. Water slid down his face, but he did not move to wipe it away. He walked. The world around him blurred. Umbrellas, passing cars, neon signs flickering through the storm. Each step echoed with memories that no longer stayed hidden. A station, the smell of smoke and iron. Lena's laughter, soft and fragile under the roar of departing trains. And then, his voice, promising something he never fulfilled. He stopped walking. The image came clearer now, unrolling like a film inside his head. He had been younger then, full of restless ambition and fear of standing still. She had been holding his arm, asking him to stay, asking him to believe in something other than escape. He remembered the moment he turned away. The train pulled forward, her face vanishing behind a curtain of rain. That night had followed him everywhere, though he never admitted it. He thought he had left her behind, but now she was here again, in this same city, in this same rain. He started walking faster, his shoes splashing through puddles. He did not know where he was going, only that he had to find her. He passed the old bookstore where he once spent nights reading until dawn. Its window was cracked, the lights dimmed. Something about it felt frozen in time. Further ahead, the road curved toward the train station. A shiver of recognition ran through him. He kept going. The closer he came, the louder his heartbeat grew. The station still stood there, though smaller than he remembered. Worn bricks, fading paint, and a flickering sign barely holding its letters. The platform was almost empty except for a few late-night travelers. And her. Lena stood near the edge, holding the same beige umbrella, her figure framed by the yellow glow of a streetlight. She turned slightly as he approached, as if she had been waiting. Ethan slowed his pace, unsure whether to speak or to stand there. "You came," she said, her voice barely rising above the rain. "I had to," he said. She smiled faintly. "You said that once before." "I remember now," he said. "The night I left." Her eyes softened. "Do you remember what you promised?" He nodded slowly. "That I would come back. That I would find you again." "And you never did," she said. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that I had ruined everything." "You did not ruin it," she said quietly. "You only ended it before it began." The words sank deep, sharper than accusation, softer than forgiveness. He stepped closer, rain soaking through his suit, hair dripping onto his collar. Her umbrella tilted slightly toward him, shielding part of his face. Their eyes met under its small shelter. Time seemed to fold. The same space, the same rain, the same silence that once separated them. "I am sorry," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. "You think saying it changes what happened?" "No," he said, "but maybe it changes what comes next." She lowered the umbrella, letting the rain fall freely between them. Drops ran down her hair, her skin glistening under the dim light. "I waited for years," she said. "Every year on this day. I thought you might remember. I tried not to," he confessed, because remembering meant feeling it all again. Her expression softened, though her eyes still held a quiet ache. "Then why now?" "Because I saw you," he said, and suddenly, forgetting felt heavier than the memory. For the first time that night, she smiled, not the polite kind, not the cautious one from the cafe. This one was real. "It took you long enough," she said. He wanted to laugh, but his throat tightened instead. Rain poured harder, washing the world into shades of gray and gold. The platform lights flickered as a train passed in the distance, its horn echoing through the night. Ethan stepped closer until they were only inches apart. "Lena," he whispered, "is there still a chance?" She looked at him, her face unreadable, then slowly shook her head. "Not the way you think," she said. He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Her gaze dropped to the pendant resting against his shirt. "That belonged to you once," she said, "but you gave it away to forget." He reached up, holding it tightly. "Then why do I still have it?" "Because you are still trying to remember who you were with me," she said. Thunder rolled across the sky. The sound vibrated through the metal tracks. Ethan looked around. The same station, the same rain, but something felt different now. Fainter, like a memory replaying itself. He looked back at her, suddenly afraid to blink. Her edges seemed softer, less defined under the rain. "Lena," he whispered, "are you real?" She smiled, calm, sad, almost peaceful. "I was," she said, "and in some ways I still am." The air grew colder. A gust of wind lifted her hair, and for a moment he could see right through her, just a flicker like light bending in water. He took a step forward, reaching out. His fingers met only rain. Her voice drifted, faint but clear. "You left me waiting," she said. "So I waited until memory brought you back." "Please," he said, his voice shaking. "Do not go." Her eyes shimmered, filled with the kind of warmth that only belonged to something once alive. "You cannot hold what no longer exists," she whispered. "But you can choose not to forget again." And then she smiled one last time, a smile that carried every unspoken goodbye. The wind rose, the rain thickened, and her image dissolved like breath on glass. Ethan stood alone under the streetlight, his heartbeat echoing against the distant rumble of the train. The pendant hung cold against the skin now. He closed his eyes, letting the rain soak him completely. Somewhere deep inside, he felt both grief and relief. She was gone, but the weight of forgetting was gone with her. He opened his eyes again. The city lights flickered beyond the mist, and though he could not see her anymore, he heard her voice in the rain, soft, almost tender. "Do not forget twice." Ethan stood there for a long time, watching the train disappear into the storm. And for the first time in years, he knew he never would. The storm had passed by morning. The city woke slowly, washed clean, its streets gleaming under the pale light of dawn. Ethan walked without purpose, following the rhythm of the waking world. Footsteps against wet pavement, the distant hiss of cars, the smell of rain-soaked earth. In his pocket, the pendant rested against his palm. Cold, heavy, real. He stopped near the river. The water moved quietly, carrying reflections of the sky and the city skyline beyond. He looked at the pendant for a long time. The engraved letters, E and L, shimmered faintly in the new light. He smiled, a small, quiet smile that came not from happiness, but from understanding. He had carried guilt for too long, not just for leaving, but for pretending it had never happened, for denying what love had once taught him, that some people enter your life not to stay forever, but to change how you see it. He closed his fist and whispered softly, "Thank you, Lena." Then he knelt by the edge of the water and placed the pendant gently into the river. The current caught it, turning it once before carrying it away. For a moment, he watched the ripples spread, circles expanding outward, fading into the flow. He felt lighter. The weight in his chest, the fog in his mind, even the echo of her voice, all of it softened into something peaceful. He stood there for a while, letting the breeze dry his clothes, feeling the warmth of the sun return. People passed behind him, strangers moving toward their own stories. A couple laughed as they crossed the bridge. A child pointed at the water, seeing only light and motion, not memory. Ethan took a deep breath. He turned away from the river and began to walk. Each step felt new, deliberate, the kind of step that comes from someone who has finally stopped running. As he reached the corner cafe, the same one where it had all begun, he paused. Through the window, the same table stood empty. 2 cups sat side by side, waiting for no one. He smiled again. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, warm air wrapping around him. The barista looked up. "Morning," she said with a friendly nod. "Coffee?" "Yes," he said. "Black." As she turned to prepare it, Ethan glanced at the seat across from him. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw her, sitting there, smiling gently, her hand resting near the cup. But when he blinked, the seat was empty again. He exhaled, not in sadness, but in peace. He lifted his cup when it came, feeling the heat against his palms, the scent rising like a memory of comfort. Outside, the world glowed brighter. The storm was gone. The sky was clear. Ethan took a sip, set the cup down, and whispered, "Some memories are not meant to fade." Then he smiled once more, a smile that belonged to the present, not the past. And as the cafe filled again with quiet music and morning light, he knew he had finally found what he lost all those years ago. Not her, but himself. The end.